I want to thank everybody for coming today. So I guess I'm going to be Rich, I'm going to be Tom, and Jim, and Joe. That's all right. Everybody's got things going on today. So quickly, let me just go over a couple things going on here at the park. Next week, August 25th, it's going to be a very interesting talk. Not that this one or any other one wasn't interesting, but this is interesting. The 14th century plague. It's going to be on the 1918 influenza and COVID. Should be real interesting, especially since there was a influenza home up in Tower Hill, full of tents and everything. I actually got a postcard of that. They right around the water tower, they had the duck cloth tents loaded, and that's where they put all the people from the influenza breakout. So that's coming up. We also got Labor Day weekend, we got the Bread and Roses Festival. There'll be trolley tours all day long. I'm doing 12:30 and 1:30. Joe's doing 2:30 and 3:30 if anyone's interested and wants any of us for tours. Then we get the Bread and Roses walking tours on Thursdays, Monuments and Martyrs on Fridays at 10 a.m. Narrated boat tours on Saturdays. That's actually pretty good. I haven't been on one, but Rich does it, and whatever Rich does is really good. And that's from 10 to 12. And then on September 1st is the 35th anniversary celebration in Lawrence Heritage State Park at 11:30. I will not be here for that, but I hear that's going to be a great event. They got some great speakers coming. Rumor has it that Rich was able to pull a Hail Mary off. And we got former Governor Michael S. Dukakis coming to speak, so that's going to be exciting. Because he was here when the park opened up, so it's very historical, so that's exciting too. So I just wanted to go through all of that. But yeah, there's one more brown bag lunch coming. If you missed any of these, Lawrence Cable Access TV is also running them. Check the schedule. They'll be up. This one won't be up for what, a week or two? So, but keep an eye on the schedule and you can see it there. And anything going on at the park is up on the bulletin board now at on LCAT, so you can keep an eye on that for the most up-to-date calendar. So that helps. So today's talk's going to be on socialism. And I don't mean the socialism that goes around that's affected to one certain group or another group of people. I'm talking about the rise of socialism right here in the Merrimack Valley. There's a book, and I own the book, and I actually forgot the book. It's called The Socialist Movement in Massachusetts. It's about yay book. It's way out of print. I forgot it. Sorry about that. If you want to see it afterwards, it's buried in my trunk. We can go down and I'll show you the book later on. But let me just give a quick overview of what socialism is. All right, socialism. It encompasses an economic philosophy and a wide range of economic and social system ideas. It means that all production comes from one instead of like we have today, individual businesses doing production and selling things. Socialism would collect all of that, government controlled, and bring it down. So, in theory, the idea of socialism, in theory, isn't that bad. Social democracy originated out of the socialist movement, and we'll talk a little bit about the Socialist Democratic Party, which Chase was part of in a few minutes, and why they came to power, too. The socialist movement came to power and influence because of what was going on in the world. Remember, 1899 to the early 1900s, we're right here in Lawrence, Haverhill, it doesn't matter, Lowell. It was an industrial time. It was an industrial boom. And there were not things in place to take care of the workers. 60 to 80 hours a week, and you bring home $1.50 a week, and I don't mean $150, I mean $1.50. Not only that, the mills controlled the housing, and it doesn't matter what city you're in. Haverhill, Lawrence, Lowell, and even Methuen. The mill owners controlled the housing. That's how this city was built. The mills, the workers' housing, which one of the building was a workers' home. And you can see that on the second floor, what a workers' home would look like. And then in the upper hills, Tower Hill, Prospect Hill, you got those beautiful federal-style homes. That's where the owners and the management lived, except for Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood lived in Andover. And most of your big industrialists didn't live in the city that they were running. In Haverhill, they lived off of Mill Street, which is the original downtown, which if heading to the old Building 19, where the road bends, there's a set of lights, take a left, the cemetery's on the right-hand side, and then there's a bicycle shop on the left. That's the original downtown. That's where those owners lived. Most of the other owners lived in the hills of Lawrence. Same with Lowell, except for Mr. Wood. He lived in a solid gold home up there on Route 28 in Andover. Should go check that place out. It's a nice place inside. I've been in there. So what was going on? So we have all this labor going, shoes, textiles. We're booming here in the Merrimack Valley, booming. The Industrial Revolution is upon us. Businesses are booming, people are working. Immigrants are coming over in boatloads from Ellis Island, Machias Bay, Boston, New York. And they're filling these factories. They're filling them with workers. The potato famine helped bring all the Irish over here for more work because a lot of people lost their lives on Ireland during the famine. So that's what was going on. So was it the right time? It was. Socialism gave these workers a chance. Did it really end up working? No, it didn't work out at the end, and we'll get into that. But it gave them a chance. It gave them a better work week, a little bit better life, at least on paper, than they were getting from the mill owners. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to move a minute, but that's all right. I'm going to talk about the Haverhill shoe strike. And then we can get into John Calvin Chase. All right. The Great New England Shoe Strike of 1860. Busy year in 1860. What else happened in 1860? War broke out. 1860, what a year, huh? So by the mid to late 1800s, socialism, or social democracy, was strong, not just in Lawrence, but in Haverhill, Lowell. It was strong because, like I said, it incorporated with local labor unions to provide a broad support for the workers. Now this strike is going to give us, when we get to this strike and what happened, you'll see why Lawrence was successful and Haverhill wasn't so successful to the extent it was. So political ambition of city leaders, also inept political leaders. So you had the inept people running, and then you had people that wanted to run. So they were looking for ways to get the voters to vote for them. The labor movement in Haverhill was not foreign. The Working Man's Party would appear on the ballot. The Small Labor Party disappeared around 1892, which was a large group of citizens committed to support the People's Party. So they had elected officials in these cities, in Haverhill and even beyond. James Carey was a prominent trade unionist, provided over the whole caucus. So James Carey is the guy without the mustache in that picture over there. The clean-shaven guy, unlike me. And so that's James Carey. By 1895, the Populist Party was done. James Carey, who led the party, was reported to be a strong socialist. On April 1895, the Socialist Labor Party was born. By the fall of 1895, most of the Populist Party had joined up. With the merger of the two parties, the Socialist Labor Party, or the SLP that had been called, had joined with local labor leaders. So now the SLP, the labor, everybody's together. So you got one bigger party instead of the workmen's group, the populist group, the mill owner group. You got a large group here. Besides strike talk, they also asked for people to strike at the ballot box and elect leaders that will fight for the workers. So this was all about fighting for these poor workers that were working in the mills, losing their hair, losing their ears, losing their fingers, some of them even dying in fires, and beyond the great fire over here that happened, the Pemberton Mill disaster right down the road here. The Socialist Party was working hard, preparing citizens and workers of Haverhill for better working conditions in 1893. During the strike, which we'll get to, provided some rations for the workers, so they provided some food. Socialism continued strong, but due to the inter-conflict and resurgence of the Republican Party, and Carey lost in 1903 to lead the end of socialism in Haverhill. So that ended socialism, but we go to this board. So you'll see Carey, we're going to get to John Chase right now. The strike only lasted a year. It started December 1894, went to March 1895, and it was over low wages. They wanted less hours, more pay, less hours, and the poor working condition. 3,000 workers walked out of the two newest mills. Now, if you're familiar with Haverhill, most of the mills you see are in the downtown. These were not. This was the Chick and the Spalding. Does everybody remember where Dairy Queen was in Haverhill? Now it's a Mercedes BMW dealership on River Street. Okay, if you're coming into Haverhill, there's a factory on the left-hand side. That was the Spalding, and the Chick was across the street. Those were the two modern mill buildings. Those were the first to go. And those were the two main factories. They walked out, and it started to strike. Now, why didn't the strike last? Well, I'll tell you why the strike didn't last, and then we'll get into John Calvin Chase. Well, they needed money to pay rent, food, medical. The Socialist Labor Party did not have the backing to get that type of money. They did get some working conditions changed, but not much. But what this strike did provide, though, was a roadmap. A roadmap that led to the Bread and Roses strike in Lawrence, and why that was so successful, which Jim always talked about. They learned that you needed to feed, clothe, get food, and shelter for these workers. So that's why the IWW figured this out and got money coming in all over the world nationally to pay to keep these workers at home. Because without that, that strike would have failed too. Especially in the, this is winter time in New England. You need your heat, you can't be outside too long. You're freezing in March. March isn't a pretty month to be outside. So, John Calvin Chase is born in a town of Gilmanton, New Hampshire, May 27th, 1870, to a working class family. So he watched his father and mother, especially father, suffer through the mills. Gilmanton is out on 101. It's out west of Manchester. They didn't stay long there. By the age of 1, his family moved to Ossipee, New Hampshire for work. His father died when he was 1 year old. If you go through the center of Ossipee now, you will see it's in the Ossipee-Milton line. You will actually see where the father's buried. We know where the father's buried. His mother, Lynithia, moved the family to Milton Mills, New Hampshire, and worked in the woolen mills. Milton Mills is just outside of Somersworth, south of Ossipee. It's like right after Rochester. It's the next town north on Rochester, so just so you know where he's coming from. Milton, you guys might remember, this is an off-seat, but remember 10 years ago we had that big flood and there was a controversy up in New Hampshire whether to open up a dam or not in southern Rockingham County, southeastern Rockingham County? That's Milton. Milton Three Ponds, Milton Mills, that area, that's where he came from. Because that would have made national news, that thing. So, by the age of 9, he was working with his mother, alongside his mother in the mills, helping pay for the family bills. Imagine at the age of 9 working. Can we ask a 9-year-old to work today? Having trouble finding strong work, the family moved to Sanford, Maine, which wasn't that far. Literally, go right over the Milton 3 Ponds and you're in Sanford, Maine. Just the other side of the lake. And then Sanford, and then later to Barnstead, New Hampshire. At the age of 13, he was working at a shoe factory in 1883. In 1888, at the age of 16, he joined the Boot and Shoe Workers Union and was elected delegate to help organize a national convention. So this guy was a natural-born leader. At 16, he's out there organizing a national convention. So you know you got big things coming at that age. So he must have been a shy guy, like me. In 1890, the economy started to slow down. We were coming into a recession. That happens sometimes. Working conditions were getting worse. Health issues with workers, longer days, less pay. You can see where the problems are really starting to go up. That's why that strike happened. In 1893, the factories were starting to cut hours. But they didn't give you the same pay. They cut your pay. You still had the bills to pay. So longer hours, leather prices were going up, shoe sales were dropping, and a financial depression was on our back door at this time. Workers were getting set, so by December, which is the peak of the busy season, to March 1885, 3,000 shoe workers made up of Italian and Jewish immigrants walked out of Chick Spalding factory located on River Street, which I already said. And there were other factories providing housing and homes on Washington Street, which is Mount Washington, the hill. Some of those people were helping the people from the Chicks with their food, water. The strike ended in 1895, but in 1890, Chase moved to Haverhill. So right at the beginning of this issue, in comes riding John Calvin Chase. And he started working in the shoe factories. The union soon led him to unemployment and in the shoe industry. He established a co-op grocery store with the help of the unions. He also had a tobacco store in downtown Haverhill. So he was able to meet with people because even though they weren't getting their money, people still wanted their smokes. So where you had best to meet and talk to people and organize people at a smoke shop. So he had his own smoke shop. So he was a member of the People's Party in 1890. 1894, Socialist Labor Party of America. 1896, he committed a member to the Marxist Party and ran for Attorney General on Massachusetts on the Socialist Labor Party. Ticket, he lost. 1898, Chase returned to Haverhill as an SLP member after losing in New York City, and he ended his connection with the party. He ran for governor, for mayor of New York City and lost. He lost a lot of time. In 1898, aggravated about the new party for Haverhill's Socialist Democratic Party, he and Victor Berger and Eugene Debs and 60 new members got together and changed the name to the Socialist Democratic Party. So we went from the Socialist Labor Party, SLP, to the SDP. In 1898, he ran for mayor of Haverhill and won, became the first socialist mayor in the United States. in 1900, he lost the election. 1901, the Socialist Democratic Party, Mayor Chase, was named a national organizer of the party. In 1901, he opened up a cigar shop on Locust Street in downtown Haverhill, which is, it's easy to access from Route 97. Right near the Greek Orthodox Church is Locust Street. He still had to work. 1902 to 1903, Chase was named the Socialist Party candidate and for governor of Massachusetts. He captured 8.4% of the vote, and his second campaign, he lost the first one and the second one. He garnered 6.4% of the vote. He might have been an enthusiastic guy, but he had trouble getting votes. Like Chase, later on, I should say, Chase was elected to state secretary of the Socialist Party in New York, so he moved back to New York. In 1906, he was selected as candidate for governor of New York and lost by 21,751 votes. He garnished 1.5% of the vote. In 1820, Chase ran for U.S. Congress 3 times and lost. Chase died January 27, 1937. Cause of his death was influenza. Here's a shocker. Alcohol. I can't see why. Alcohol? Who would drink alcohol? We're not 100% sure where he's buried. There is a Chase in West Virginia, but there was another John C. Chase that was a political activist at the same time. We now believe, doing tight research, I got to get out there. This state is so far from here, though, it's not even funny. It's out in the other side of the world, to me. Driving through the state would seem like it's the other side of the world. According to what we have found out, he is buried in New Brighton, Pennsylvania, which is the other side of the world from here, at a cemetery. But we're not 100% sure. I'm still looking into where he's buried. It's either there or West Virginia. We found some death records that leads me to believe it's New Brighton, Pennsylvania, and I believe that's probably a 150-hour ride from here, maybe 200 hours from here. So I just got to take a ride out there one day and try to get out there. So that is the story of John Calvin Chase. It's not a big story, but it's for the short time he lived, he did a lot of things. I mean, rose up in the Socialist Party, created the party. Now, here's the situation with Chase. So we all know, you've all been to Bread and Roses before. I've seen you guys there before. I talked to the socialist groups that come, the labor groups that come. They don't have anything on this guy. I seem to know more about him than the Socialist Party that shows up. Well, come to find out, he had a falling out with Eugene Debs. Because I called the National Socialist Party once in Washington, D.C. They have an office in a coffee shop. And they have no record of him. Anything prior to what Debs started that we know as the Socialist Party today, there is no history of, which is kind of sad. Because it would be interesting to see where this guy ended up. Because he did a lot of traveling. He must have been well enough known even to be asked to run, especially when you're losing, getting 1.5%, 6.4% of the vote, losing by almost 22,000 votes. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but that's not really bad for a third party in a major city like New York City. I mean, he lost, but the numbers aren't that bad. when you're thinking of New York City politics with over 1 million people at the time living in New York City. I mean, that's not really that bad of numbers. So he had some value to the early socialist labor movement. He just had the falling out with the wrong guy, Eugene Debs, who became known. Not only that, in Haverhill, the father of the Republican Party was growing strong at this time. Anyone know who the father of the Republican Party is? Some local known poet out of Haverhill named John Greenleaf Whittier. He's also known as the father of the Republican Party, the original Republican Party, when it first started. So, because he was growing in popularity, that's why the Socialist Party ended up dying. Because if you remember, some of Whittier's early writing was all about freedoms and stuff. So, it's a real interesting time in American history in this area. When you put in Lawrence, Haverhill, the socialist movement, the Workers' Party movement, what was going on, and what we ended up out of it. We ended up with a 40-hour work week, pretty strong labor unions at the time. So all in all, this guy was the ground force of what we have today. And there's not a lot of information on the guy. I've been spending years researching him. Luckily, I found a few articles, but it's all recycled stuff because it was all stuff that's been in other books. The only thing that was really good was that book, the Socialist Party of Massachusetts, which is out of print. But other than that, there's not a whole lot written on this guy. His wife is supposedly buried in Windham, New Hampshire. He had no kids. And that's all we know. There's not a whole lot on this guy. That's why I threw in the shoe strike, too, to make it a little bit more exciting. Because if not, this would have been a 5 to 7 minute talk on a very interesting political fellow. Do we have any questions from you guys?
Was the Haverhill state mayor of Haverhill, right?
Mayor of Haverhill, yep.
Is that the only office that he won?
Yeah, as far as, I mean, other than the Socialist Party state championships, yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, there was something that he ran, but here's the problem, and I didn't mention this. Somewhere, because we got him dying in 1937, in the write-up of the Haverhill Hall of Fame book, it says he was elected in Nevada or Ohio, but it didn't make any sense. But there's another John Calvin Chase, and I think when they did the thing at the Haverhill High School, they might have mixed up. That's why I didn't add that in here. It could have been him, but I'm not 100. I wasn't even 10% sure. And being the type of historian I am, if I'm not near 100%, I'll leave it out till I find more evidence. No, there wasn't much of it. I mean, I don't even know where that town is in Pennsylvania. It could be some little dog town along the river somewhere. I know it's not too far from the major rivers, so he was probably living in somebody's house when he died. And he was probably trying to get the unions along the river in Cincinnati, you know, up and down the river there to rebuild this socialist party. I lived in Gilmanton. I've been to Gilmanton. Gilmanton is a real interesting town. You want to take a ride? Take a ride to Gilmanton. Because there's somebody else from the same time period that was born in Gilmanton. And I made you a talk right here. He was the first mass serial killer in the United States. During the World's Fair, he was born in Gilmanton. His house still stands. I've been in front of his house. Yeah, Gilmanton's a real interesting. You ever get a chance to go up there? Yeah, it was called the Murder Hotel at the top right. I'm not remembering the guy's name, but it happened during the World Fair in Chicago. We had a hotel with seafood, walkway behind him, go in there and grab people. Yeah, no, they probably got up. But yeah, that's probably so. But yeah, Hamilton's a real, but there's not much on them. I mean, they were movers. I don't even know where the place is buried. Thea, the mother. I'm assuming somewhere around the Rochester, Milton area, but I'm not even sure.
How old was this guy? Chase when he died?
Well, let's do some quick math, because that's one thing I'm not really good. 1870, I should have put it down, but I never thought of doing that. I will for 1937. Yeah, so he was a young guy, even for that time frame, because people were living into their 80s by then. So that was, that's young. But he also lived, obviously he had issues. According to what we found out, he died from both influenza and alcohol issues. Probably kidney or something failure like that. He probably had kidney failure, picked up the influenza, and that pretty much ended him. So we're going by that death certificate, but there's another one with John Calvin Chase around the same time. And when you're looking at 1800 death certificates, the early 1900s, you can't trust them. I mean, my grandfather was born 1911. We always celebrated his birthday on September 12th. He did it. He always told us his birthday was September 10th. Oh no, September 9th, I'm sorry, September 9th. He lived in East Methuen, out in the middle of nowhere at this time, Maple Park area. Okay, so all you listening at home too, so you want to double check, especially grandparents or great grandparents, because they were born in the city, the dates are right, but if they were born in like Methuen, they had to wait till the doctor came by to sign the birth certificate. So if they were born at home, September 9th, and they came on the 11th or the 12th, they would sign it the 11th or the 12th, whatever date they came on. So I don't trust even the birth certificates of that time, especially where he was born in Gilmanton. Gilmanton's still a very small town. It's growing, but compared to most towns, Gilmanton's a small town. Imagine what it was in the 1880s, 1890s. It was next to nothing. They probably had to wait for a doctor from Manchester to show up, or Concord.
Did he have any relatives?
He had no kids. Chase is a big name in Haverhill. So I started asking around all the Chase family members I know. Nobody's saying they're related to him. Because there was that Chase's History of Haverhill was written by a Chase. It's 1640 to 1860. It's a book about yay thick, yay big, called Chase's History of Haverhill. Anything you want to know about Haverhill, if you can find it. Actually, it's free online on some website. I forgot the name of it, but there's a site you can actually read it off the website. It's free. Or you can go to the libraries, they got the book. But yeah, it's called Chase's History. He's not even before, he doesn't even make Chase's History. I'm still looking for stuff on this guy. That's why I keep giving this talk and hoping it's something will break down the road. Someone hears something, someone knows something, because I'm still researching this guy among other research projects I work on. I added a little bit from the last time I did this talk. If I do this talk again next year, I'll add more to it for sure, because I think I found some more stuff, but I wasn't ready yet to put in this talk, yet. Because I want to double check it with second and third sources before actually talking about it. Any other questions? Any questions? No? I want to thank you guys for coming today. There are some cookies, water, and iced tea up there, so have some of that before you leave. And you can come look at the board stuff up here too. I'll leave it up, no big deal.